what I've decided to share with everybody here today is what my experience has been in choosing why this was something that I am doing right now, along with other projects that I'm doing. But then more importantly, how it fits into the shared reality of poverty that pervades our country and how we as individuals can do so much to change that if we try. So that's Babu. That's a young boy that I work with. This photo was taken about 3 years ago. And Babu lives in a part state, part civil society run center for orphans and for children who come in via different government child welfare systems. Babu is now about 10 years old. He goes to school. He enjoys playing sports. He's really naughty. He also enjoys wearing dark glasses. And Babu, like many other children in our country, numbering I think almost 20 million and counting children in our country, face a series of challenges in their day-to-day lives, whether it's the fact that they don't have homes or any kind of parental support, the fact that they live in appalling poverty or unsanitary conditions, malnutrition, child labor, disease, a series of challenges that they face every day of their lives. And what I decided to do in 2008 was, keeping in mind this situation that children and a lot of young people in our country face, was to look at my own background, which was mainly in the liberal arts and in music, and to look at what it would be possible for me to do. And knowing a lot of young musicians and young artists, but also more eminent musicians and artists like the ones we're going to be hearing later today, I decided that it might be interesting to just get these two worlds to connect. So the two things that the project that I run and the organization that I run does is look at this shared and this lived reality of poverty, but look at how we as individuals are able to connect with it in a meaningful but also in an enjoyable way. And the second thing that we do is to look at how these shared realities of poverty and these voices of poverty are able to be raised in a way that people are interested in hearing them. A big problem that I personally feel is that a lot of us genuinely don't believe that there's much to listen to or that things are possible to change. But what I'd like to share today is the fact that listening to these voices and hearing this perspective that's coming from the poor sometimes is the most powerful tool we can have in shaping what solutions can be. Earlier last year, I had the opportunity on a US state government program to visit different parts of the country to understand more about youth leadership in the US. And for me, one of the most memorable moments was the first city that I traveled to. So I traveled to Washington, DC, but then also to Texas, to Seattle on the east or the west coast, and then to the east coast as well. And the most memorable moment was almost by accident, in fact, and I was at the Lincoln Memorial, and I suddenly happened upon this tile, which is there, and it's fairly inconspicuous, there that says, "I have a dream." And growing up, and I'm also a history student, so the civil rights movement was something that for me was always really fascinating and interesting, and also exploring music in the civil rights movement. But why I wanted to share this today was the fact that when I stood at that stone and I thought back to, what makes it such a pivotal place to stand, is that if some of us are aware, in 1963, that's the tile that now marks the spot where Martin Luther King stood when he gave his pivotal and world-changing speech that said, "I have a dream." And for me, more than what was actually said in the speech was the fact that when he stood there, he was addressing a gathering of more than, I think, 250,000 people and talking about empowerment and jobs and rights. But also, for me, what strikes me the most is the comment that he made somewhere actually almost towards the end of his speech. After he talks about his dream for the nation and his dream for the country, he says something along the lines of, "I have a dream for a world or for a country where my children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their minds." And I feel that that sentiment is possibly one of the most powerful sentiments when, again, we look at what kind of solutions we want for change in our country. So I could have opened my presentation with this picture, and this is a stock photo from World Vision, which is an international organization. And this also, I think, resonates with a lot of what the other speakers here today have said, whether it was the speaker who shared with us what's happening with Goonj in Delhi or with other projects that we've heard of today, is that this is a very real picture. It's a very bleak picture. It's a sad picture of what's happening in our country, of poverty in our country. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about this picture and then why it's so important for us to kind of move away from this picture of what our country is and to dream of something that can be more, that can be happier, that can be more positive, where we all are sort of working together to strive towards equal rights and social justice. What's most striking about poverty is, we've heard things about how you don't have clothes and the right of food is a problem, and there's a whole plethora of sort of multi-dimensional problems that the poor face. But one of the most, I think, powerful problems that the poor face is this overwhelming feeling of powerlessness. And that's what I'd like to talk more about today, and how through having voices, having an opportunity to share that perspective from the voice of the poor, it's the first step towards finding solutions. So Music Basti was a project that was started in 2008 in Delhi, keeping in mind this lived reality and how it's possible to change it, whether through music or whatever it is that the rest of us can bring as skills to the table, and make something change in the perspective that we have about what the world should look like that we live in. And when talking about poverty, yes, it is material, but there are equally important economic, cultural, and social dimensions to it, but also the psychological. Feelings of overwhelming powerlessness, voicelessness, humiliation, dependency, and shame that the poor feel and experience, which are very important to share as well. And I'd like to just share with you a couple of studies which have been done in the last 20 years. One called Can Anyone Hear Us? Voices from 47 Countries, which is a World Bank publication that came out in '96. And a following study which was done in 4 states in India called Moving Out of Poverty in India, which was done, I think, in Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, Assam, and one more state. And what's very interesting about both these studies is that they chronicle the experience of poverty, but from the perspective of the poor. And there's 2 key findings from these studies that I want to share. The first being the fact that in Voices from 47 Countries, they share this point that in overcoming poverty, establishing a cultural identity is integral. And in the study that was done in India, which spans over 10 years, and looks at local communities who are living in poverty and their lived experiences of poverty, they share 10 key insights in that study, and I'll be happy to share the studies with anyone who's interested. But the 5th key finding and the insight that they share is that of having aspirations, and how aspirations are one of the most powerful tools for upward mobility and for moving out of poverty. So moving ahead, in 2008 again, when the project began, it basically, currently we work with about 400 children in different parts of Delhi, and in the last 5 years we've worked with about 500 children in Delhi and over 200 artists across the city and from different parts of the country. And I'm really happy to share that after 5 years of being more or less a self-funded project, this is the first year where we have support not only from one of the most forward entertainment companies in the country, whose name I think fits very well, called Only Much Louder. And also from, we heard a lot about cricket today, so from Brett Lee's foundation called Music, which is also a foundation that does similar work in India and in Australia. And for us, this has been a really encouraging step, being a collective of young artists and young musicians who are not only saying that music education is important, but saying that music is a really important and powerful tool for advocacy. And there are many similar projects and similar organizations across the world. One which is based in Uganda, which is a personal favorite of mine, called the Voice Project. And their mission is to, and their sort of vision is a world where we fight, and this is in the context of what is happening in Uganda with the LRA. Their vision is to fight not with guns, but armed with songs, and that the powers that are stronger than any bullet or any gun is that of compassion, the strength of human will, and determination. And on that note, what I would like to just kind of leave you with is a call to action that says that it's time as a solution that not only we examine a collective conscience, and we heard a lot about that in the last few talks as well, where it's time that we need to examine what we are doing as individuals, but also as a community. But to look at changing norms that dictate that when children or when the poor come and knock at our windows in our cars or at our doors, that we look away. Norms that say that it's appropriate to live in a country where we live with extreme wealth but also extreme poverty, and in the last 30 years this is only exponentially increasing. Norms that are predicated on the fact that the poor are believed to be lazy or undeserving, and norms that also say and believe strongly in the fact that change in our country is nearly impossible at the structural or at the institutional level. So I would like to leave saying that sometimes the solution lies in something as simple as just going and singing and doing a monkey dance with a group of children that you've never met. But more importantly, that change lies in letting go of and forgetting social norms that it's long past time we forget. Thank you.